MySafetyTrainingOnline.com presents Ergonomics of Material Handling. Welcome. The objectives of our course: we'll identify the causes of material handling injuries. We'll define activities involved in manual material handling. We'll apply manual material modeling to hazard recognition. We'll recognize the factors that influence manual material handling. We'll understand and apply the guidelines to safe lifting. And we'll return to the workplace and conduct a basic survey. What is manual material handling? Manual material handling, or we'll refer to it hereafter as MMH, is an important application of ergonomic principles that particularly addresses back injury prevention. Section 1, the costs of manual material handling. Group activity exercise. As a group, from your experiences, list as many of these activities as you can: lifting or lowering, carrying, holding, pushing or pulling, or twisting. Ergonomic costs of manual material handling are $1.2 billion in 3 years from 2009 to 2011. with 30,741 accepted disabling claims in that period. 55% of them were filed for sprains and strains, 40% in the trunk area. Manual material handling involves 5 types of activities: lifting and lowering, pushing and pulling, twisting, carrying, and holding. Lifting and lowering is defined as lifting to raise from a lower to a higher level. The range of the lift can be from ground to as high as you can reach from your hands. Lowering is the exact opposite activity from lifting. Pushing and pulling. Pushing is to press against with a force in order to move the object. The opposite is the pull. As applied to MMH, the act of moving the upper body to one side or the other is twisting, while the lower body remains in a relatively fixed position. Twisting can take place while the entire body is in a state of motion. Carrying, having an object in one's grasp or attached while in this act of moving. The weight of the object becomes part of the total weight of the person doing the work. Holding, having an object in one's grasp while in a static body position. Section 3, modeling material handling activities. Anything used to compare one thing with another is considered to be a model. Hey, we got a crash dummy here. They tell me I'm a crash dummy, but I prefer to think of myself as a model for safety. What do you think? I think he still looks like a crash dummy. There are 3 scientific methods: the Biomechanical Model, the physiological approach, and the Niosh lifting guidelines. A biomechanical model attempts to establish the physical stresses imposed on the musculoskeletal system while working. Sprains and strains have consistently been the major nature of injury, accounting more than half of all disabling claims. Back sprains and strains would be the single most frequent work injury, responsible for 25.3 of total claims in 2011. Here we can see a model of the L5-S1 disc. The L5-S1 disc deals with lower back stress. The numbers C1 through 37 on the disc, as well as T1 through T12 and L1 through L5 are the designations assigned to the vertebrae. The vertebrae is one of the bony segments composing the spinal column. Remember, compressive forces will affect the L5-S1 disc at the base of the column. The disc allows flexibility in your spine and act as shock absorbers. The center of the disc is jelly-like. It is surrounded by a tough rubber-like bands that are attached to the bones. The nerves provide energy to make the muscles work. Please note the nerve connections with regards to the location of the discs. The compressive forces on the L5-S1 disc are a function of the following: the length and weight of the upper extremities, the angles from the vertical of these body parts, how far the object is to be handled from the arch of the foot, the weight of the load, how much of the object is to be handled weighs. Twisting in the middle of a lift amplifies the negative results of the forces on the lower back. For purposes of illustration, consider the following: the great herniated tomato experiment. Twisting causes multiple forces on the stress of the L5-S1 disc. What about cumulative trauma? That is the angle from the upper vertical of the trunk. That is the angle from the lower vertical of the upper arm. The following model shows sources of force on the L5-S1 disc. Here we have the angle from the upper vertical of the lower arm. It does not reflect the added forces during twist or bending and lifting. Factor 1 equals the subject weight, the subject height, and angle A. Factor 2 is the subject weight, subject height, angle A, and angle B. Factor 3 is subject height, angle A, angle B, and angle C. Factor 4 equals the object weight, the subject height, angle A, and angle B, and angle C. When a task requires more than 3 lifts per minute, a person's endurance is primarily lifted by the capacity of the oxygen transport system. Increased metabolism demands an increase in delivery of oxygen and nutrients to the tissue. A person's endurance is primarily limited by the capacity of the oxygen transport system. Increased metabolism demands an increase in delivery of oxygen and nutrients to the tissue. You have factors of energy cost, heart rate, blood pressure, and blood lactate are measured. The chart will show you endurance versus the buildup of lactic acid in the blood. The physiological approach equals 3+ lifts per minute. Here we show the relationship of frequency to weight. The weight can be lifted is marked on the left of the chart. The frequency of lifts per minute increases as the weight of the objects to be lifted decreases. Here in modeling we have as the frequency of lifts, the weight of the objects to be lifted must be decreased, showing the relationship of frequency to weight. That's assuming 3+ lifts per minute. Here we have another chart that shows the frequency of lifts. The weight of the objects to be lifted must be decreased as the frequency increases. Aerobic capacity is defined as the maximum level of metabolism which a person is capable. An individual's aerobic capacity depends upon the capacity to deliver oxygen to the working muscles. The effective use of muscles. It is advantageous to design or select a task load which maximizes efficiency. For dynamic effort or work, the optimum load is approximately 30% of the maximum. Overloaded or underloading the muscular system is not efficient. The effective use of muscles. It is advantageous to design or select a task load which maximizes efficiency. A dynamic work effort is the optimal load of 30% of maximum. For static work, the optimal load is 10% of the maximum. Factors that influence manual material handling. Section 4. Manual material handling is influenced by the following factors: worker characteristics, task characteristics / worker practices, manual/container characteristics. Worker characteristics are different in each of us and affect the kind and amount of work that we can perform. Section 5, Safe Lifting Guidelines. The following 5 general rules should be applied at every opportunity. Number 1, plan the lift. Both squat and stoop lifting is now considered acceptable for jobs requiring repetitive lifting. The term used to describe freeform lifting. No matter what type of lift is used, it is never permissible to exceed the maximum acceptable load for the worker. Safe lifting method. Remember, keep the load as close to the body as possible. Lift the load with a smooth body motion, avoiding jerking. When turning, do not twist. Turn with your feet. Here we can see an example of how not to lift by placing the maximum stress on your L5S1 disc. But in the future slides, we'll show step-by-step manually lifting a load while minimizing the effect on your back. We can talk about Niosh lifting guidelines, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, as far as what they suggest for safe lifting a load. Go to niosh.gov to see all the details of Niosh's safe lifting guidelines. Remember to keep your back arched when lifting. Keep your head and shoulders up. Safe lifting techniques, body mechanics, include planning ahead and testing the load before you lift it. Here we can see an example of the diagonal lift, taking a load from ground level to waist level. Here we can see two examples of lifting a load correctly versus lifting a load incorrectly. On the left side, you can see lifting a load and keeping the weight as close as possible to the body. And on the right, you can see keeping a load and putting all the stress on your L5S1 disc. Here we can see an example of the power lift, taking a load as close to your body as possible, using your legs, not your back, to get a load up to waist level. Section 6, the Manual Material Handling Survey. Surveys are tools that can remind us of conditions and practices that, when present in the workplace, can lead to injury or illness. Surveys should ask critical questions about the operation. Yes or no on the costs. Are we experiencing costly accidents relative to this task? Are any of the following activities required? Lifting or lowering, pushing or pulling, twisting, carrying, or holding. Do any of the following models apply to this situation? Frequency versus weight is a physiological model. Biomechanical, compressive forces on the L5S1 disc. Is there effective use of your muscles? Is the Niosh lifting guidelines being followed? Is your aerobic capacity being reached, or your conditioning? Are any of the following factors influencing the task? Worker characteristic, task characteristics, material or container characteristics. Do any of the following models apply? Are there compressive forces on the L5S1 disc? What is the frequency or weight or physiological model? What is the conditioning or aerobic capacity? Are you effectively using your muscles? Is the Niosh lifting guidelines applicable to the situation? As an administrator, it's your job to understand how heavily the worker characteristics and task characteristics, as well as material/container characteristics, are weighted in their importance in affecting the task. Each one of these characteristics have to be weighted as far as their importance go. Training. Is the employee in need of training in safe lifting? Is the employee in need of training in body mechanics? If the answer to any one of these is yes, can it be serious enough to cause a serious injury or illness? If the answer is yes, the higher the risk. Even if the answer is yes to determine to be minor, then there is a cumulative effect of multiple negative factors. Is the employee in need of training in safe lifting? Is the employee in need of training in body mechanics? Any one answer of yes can be serious enough to cause a serious injury or illness. The more yes answers, the higher the risk, even if the single yes is determined to be minor. This is due to the cumulative effect of multiple negative factors. Here's an example of kneeling when in a low position. Lifting while stooped over are bad lifting techniques. A straight leg lift, bending at the hips, not at the back. Here we can see an example of keeping the weight as low as possible when moving the object. Here another no-no, stooping while in a work position. Here we can see an example of keeping the load as high as possible when lifting. Remember to keep your back supported when doing a lifting job. Remember that holding materials for prolonged periods of time can result in back problems. Thanks for participating from the gentle folks at MySafetyTrainingOnline.com.